All right, so today we're talking about this arrangement of right triangles that I call right triangle slope. And in this arrangement, we have all of the diagonal pleats in the same orientation. Next week, we're going to talk about a different arrangement of right triangles where the diagonals go in all directions. So alternating patterns. In this tiling, we have pretty much the same options we've been having. Closed, closed, same side. Closed, closed, opposite sides. Then closed, open, same sides, closed, open, opposite sides, open, open, same sides, open, open, opposite sides. And I don't have all of those examples to show because this tiling is one where I tend to take a different approach. Instead of alternating, I tend to use a column structure where I have my twists line up and then I can choose to either have those columns mirror on the same side or repeat on the opposite sides. So either approach is good, and technically still alternating. It would just be alternating columns instead of twists. But for today, we're going to be doing the closed open on the same side tessellation. And I'm using a 24-fold 45-degree single diagonal grid. So that means I have 24 divisions in the square grid, and my diagonals have like alternating line here, but I don't have an X in a single grid square. And good morning, Nancy. Welcome. So we're going to dive right in. And first off, I'm going to find the center of the tessellation. And today we're going to do a little bit of looking at a crease pattern too. So I'm finding the center. And zooming in to the center, I'm going to go ahead and switch us over to that crease pattern so we can make sure that we're using the same orientation. So here's the center of the paper, and I've got a vertical, a horizontal, and a diagonal going down and to the left. So the vertical and horizontal are going to be those same two mountains that I used to find the center of my paper. And then the diagonal down and to the left. And we're going to rotate this right-handedly. And this is a closed right triangle twist. I'll make sure to put a link to my video on closed and open right triangle twists in the description after I finish streaming. And we're going to alternate between these two twists. Now, the reason for the crease pattern is so that we can see exactly the spacing on all three sides of this initial closed right triangle. And sometimes people ask, why are these called closed and open? Well, we have a closed hole here, and we'll get the open one in just a minute. So this open twist is going to come tip to tip with our closed twist. So that means that this valley going off to the left is going to come exactly to the tip of our closed twist, and our mountain will be one spacing below that. And just like we did for the equilateral triangles, for the open right triangle, we're going to have a target triangle that we are moving our mountain folds around. So opening up this diagonal pleat, I'm going to put my vertical so that it would run on this grid line bordering my target triangle there. And the valley on the outside. And we can get that in place and squashed. And now we can see what we outline on the front side is what we get outlined on the back. So this is the difference between closed and open in the right triangles. So flipping back, what I need to know for these alternating patterns, in the other tilings, I was picking one spacing. But here in right triangles, we need to know the spacing in all three directions, not just one. So I would have had freedom to move the next grouping of two. So notice that the structure here is there are these groupings of two, and they are repeating in a column, and then you jump over a set of parallel pleats to the next column. And these are really slanted, so it's not like the vertical columns I was showing you earlier with the all closed twists. So we've got that variable of what's the spacing between this group of two vertically, what's the spacing horizontally, and then inside of the group of two, what's the spacing diagonally. So I need to know all three of these things to be able to fold my tessellation. Let's start with the next vertical twist. So heading up from the corner of my closed right triangle, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to meet the extension of the horizontal coming in. So 1, 2, 3, 4 to meet the horizontal, and that gives me two sides of my target triangle. So with that target triangle identified, I can bring up my horizontal, bring up my vertical, and yes, I do acknowledge that I am moving quickly on these twist collapses, and that is part of why this is all recorded. And as we squash, you'll notice that now we have that single spacing between the corners of the two twists, just like we have in the crease pattern. So what I'm going to recommend is that we finish this column structure before we do loops. This is a different recommendation than I had for any of the other tilings. It just happens to work particularly well for this one. Then continuing up, we want to put the next closed triangle point to point with this triangle, which means going one spacing along the diagonal, then splitting the diagonal at that point into a horizontal to the right and a vertical to the top. And then we can squash that closed right triangle twist. And then if we were to go up, it would be that 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces again to find our target triangle. If I had more grid, I would be able to get a full triangle, but since I'm on a 24-fold single diagonal grid, I can only get the partial. So then, if I want to come down instead of up, I need to recount these measurements because I was counting from this corner all the way up to where this horizontal comes in. But counting down, I want to count from the tip and go 2 spaces to the center of the closed triangle. So tip, 2 spaces down. We know it's the right one because it's an intersection that has diagonals. And I'm going to need a horizontal out to the right and that's going to give me a diagonal down and to the left. And then I can go ahead and squash my twist. So then from there, I'm wanting to put in the next open twist in here. And another way to think about it is I go one spacing on the diagonal before I reach my target triangle. Then setting up the pleats around the target triangle, I can go ahead and squash my twist. And I'm coming right to the edge of the paper here, and that again is an artifact of the fact of me using a 24-fold grid as opposed to some other grid. So now that we have this structure set up, we've got this column structure. We want to jump over to the next column. And I'm going to choose to work on my right-hand side because I'm right-handed and that's my preference for folding. So I'm going to start with the shortest pleat of this set of parallel pleats. This is the same as we've done in all of our other tilings. And I'm going to identify in the crease pattern the corner of the closed square twist on the right hand side and say, okay, I need to go 1, 2, 3 spaces until I meet the vertical, and the target triangle is just past that intersection on the bottom right side. So that was 1, 2, 3 spaces to meet the vertical. My target triangle is here. So now I'm going to open up or put in the vertical pleat, both the mountain and the valley, make sure my diagonal is in place, and go ahead and squash. And I can, if I choose, finish up this corner by putting in the next closed triangle twist. I just need to be careful that I'm getting the right orientation because this is a partial twist and it can be a bit harder to tell. And if I want to be really particular about things, I can put in the corner of the next open twist right here, but I'm going to leave that be because I don't have good references for it. Then coming down, I know I'm going to need both an open and a closed triangle twist at this pleat overlap. And here's where I'll come back to the desk view. And so we're going to need an open and a closed. We already have all the measurements that we need. So I can see, for example, that it's 2 spaces from corner to corner, which means that 2 spaces I hit the valley, and then I hit the mountain of the next open twist. And so opening up the pleat overlap, I can set up the next open twist and then use the intersection of the diagonal with the vertical to set up the horizontal and get the closed twist as well. So I'm going to choose to squash the open twist first, kind of arbitrarily, and then the closed. And we're going to keep that same exact pattern as we move down. So opening the pleat overlap, I'm using the fact that I know that there's 2 spaces until I hit the valley, and then the mountain, it's outlining this target triangle. So my diagonal is going up this way. It's hitting the vertical spitting out a diagonal, and then I can squash both of those twists. And let's see. We've got a little bit more that we can do right here because our valley for the next closed twist comes in one spacing below the point of the open triangle. And that's going to be a partial twist. And I do actually have good references for this because I can see that this edge goes up 1 over 2. So I can do up 1 over 2, find that point, and squash the partial twist. So now I'm in a really similar situation to where I was before. I completed a column, I've got a set of parallel pleats, and I want to put the next column in. And here I'm looking at the shortest pleat. It's got 2 spaces, which will get me right up to the corner, but there's nothing I can do once I'm there. So I'm going to jump down to the next pleat, put in my next open triangle, and here I have a pleat overlap. And this time I'm really going to use the measures from the closed triangle. So going down 1 spacing to hit the horizontal valley, get that in place, and then I can use this up 1 over 3 to get the partial on the open triangle. Okay, so that finishes out the right-hand side of the paper. Now let's take a look at the left. So I'm going to rotate halfway around so the set of parallel pleats is on my right-hand side. And I'm going to look at the relationship between the previous 2 columns. And I can see that, okay, from this corner of the open triangle, I go 2 spacings to meet the corner of the next open twist, but I need to go 2 more spacings to get to the center. So 4 spacings total. Here's my center, and my vertical is going to go down now since I rotated my paper. And I can put in my new right triangle twist. It is right at the edge, so the paper decided to fight me a little. And that's okay. We can pull it open from the back and make sure that it goes exactly where we want it to. And then coming down, I've got this pleat overlap. And I'm going to choose to say, okay, here's the center of my next closed twist. And the vertical goes down, which is going to give me information about my next open twist. So the diagonal is coming in here, hitting the vertical. I know the vertical goes down 1 spacing from where it hits the diagonal to find the horizontal mountain. And again, really close to the edge of the paper here. So I'm being particularly careful with how I squash this twist. And then we come down, we have that same exact pleat overlap. Again, I'm going to open the overlap, find the center of my closed twist. Remember, it's 4 spaces out, or I like to think of it as the second location with diagonals. And then we find our target triangle of the open twist, this one right here, and we can squash each of those twists in turn. Coming down here, I don't have the pleat overlap because the mountain that would be coming out to the right is actually the edge of the paper, so I don't have the full pleat. But I can still find my open triangle twist by saying, okay, I'm coming down 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces until I hit my horizontal. And so 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to hit the horizontal going to the right. We locate our target triangle. And we're able to set up and squash our twist. Now that we've got this open twist here, we can go ahead and do a partial closed right triangle, getting that in place, really just doing a pivot right by the corner of the existing twist. So it looks like we can get a little bit more here in this corner. Looking at our shortest pleat, I can see that here in the corner I can get like a partial twist there. It's not going to be, so it's going to be a corner of a closed triangle, and we don't have very good references for this, so I'll just leave it at that. And then down here, we have better references because we can find the center of that triangle, set it up, and squash. And then here we're back to not having great references for things. This is going to be kind of a wishy-washy squash because I don't have enough references to really define where it goes. So that is the closed open same side alternating arrangement of twists on this grid. And one of the things that I'm noticing now that we have this folded is that we've got a whole grid line here that's lining up with things. That's pretty cool. So if we wanted to, for example, make more of a planned project, I might want to have this line as my border. So that would be a diagonal. So if I want that to be the edge of the paper, I would want to do a double diagonal grid instead of the single diagonal grid that I did today. And then I would need to find out, okay, what do I need to have in the center for that to end up working out? And we're not going to have all 4 great edges like this, because in the other direction, there is no alignment with grid lines. So if I take this grid line here, it passes on the top of a pair of right triangles. Here it passes on the bottom. Here it passes straight through the middle. And then we get back to on the top, so it appears. So it's going to be a little bit messy on one side or the other, but it's definitely a good piece to use to practice folding these open right triangles. And then if you want to get even more practice, get a screenshot of this crease pattern and try it with those open triangles on the back. So this spacing here will get the tip of the open triangle right at the closed hole of the closed triangle. So that's all that I have for you today. We've got the same alternating pattern where we have close, close, same, close, close, opposite, closed, open, same, closed, open, opposite, open, open, same, open, open, opposite. And notice I'm not saying open, closed, same, and opposite, because the only thing different with those than the closed opens is your choice of right-handed and left-handed. I'm just defaulting to the first twist being right-handed. And so these 6 options are great ones to practice. And at least some of them do have really great alignment. And you can also play with the spacing on others to try and make better alignment as well. So for example, this one, we've got good alignment in this direction and also in this direction. It would look pretty sweet on a double diagonal grid. Actually, this is a double diagonal grid. It would look good on a single diagonal grid. So I invite you to try all of these options and see what you'd like to fold. And join me next week where we'll talk about another arrangement of right triangle twists. Happy folding, and I'll see you there.